Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our fireside chat. That is a companion to our fourth Tuesday of the month support group for advanced metastatic disease. Today's fireside chat will feature Dr. Cary Presant. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. And the topic today is the City of Hope mushroom. Okay. Was it close enough? Is the City of Hope mushroom trial right for you? The doctor is professor and professor at the Department of Medical Oncology and Therapeutics Research, City of Hope in West Covina, California. He has been a practicing hematologist and medical oncologist in Southern California since 1979. He has always been involved in laboratory and clinical investigations. Dr. Presant, if I'm not pronouncing that correctly, please correct me, has authored over 400 scientific communications. His writing has included book chapters and individual articles on cancer treatment, chemotherapy, sensitivity testing to predict best precision-focused therapy for patients, cancer detection, chemotherapy, experimental tumor biology, pharmacology, and so forth. Dr. Metzger says Dr. Presant is one of the kindest, smartest MDs ever. I think we will also see that for ourselves. Dr. Metzger says he's enjoyed working with him, and the doctor will not be here because he had a return flight canceled while visiting Florence, Italy. We are excited and honored to welcome Dr. Presant and turn this over to you.
Thanks so much, Neil. Appreciate that. Thanks, Brian, also for helping to run all the IT for us. And in absentia, thanks to Chuck Metzger for inviting me to come. I'm a professor of oncology in the Department of Medical Oncology over at City of Hope. My office is in West Covina, one of our community offices that we have. And before that, I was in private practice in West Covina, and it's in private practice that I came into contact and worked closely with Chuck Metzger and took care of a lot of patients with urological cancer in the area, curing lots of patients, taking care of putting patients into remission, so their quality of life was excellent. I enjoyed working with Chuck, and it's nice to circle back and be with him again on this fireside chat. And wishing him a safe flight home at some time in the future from Florence. Next slide, please. So mushrooms are in vogue right now. Lots of people talk about them in the social media. Lots of people talk about them on television. They talk about them in published articles. Let's take a look at this, quote, magic food or fabulous fungus or whatever we want to call it. There are definitely real and some imagined benefits of mushrooms. They're high in vitamins, that's well known. They're high in selenium and iron and copper and beta-glucans and linoleic acid, which provide a patient with resistance to infection and increased immunity. That's been known and demonstrated. It lowers LDL, which is the bad cholesterol, can improve heart health and remove coronary plaque, like statins also do, but this is not a statin. It can lower your blood pressure and reduce your weight. Some people, especially in places like Glamour magazine, think it will keep you young, 5 mushrooms a day. It has good rationale for why it can lift mood and improve memory and improve energy. And some not so trustworthy sources like Facty, Glamour promote these, but also really established credible sources like UCLA Health and other places nationally, CDC, others, promote the benefits of mushrooms, which have been shown to be beneficial. But we know that some mushrooms can be deadly. Some people, rare people, have allergic reactions to the spores or molds, and obviously this is a fungus. It can have allergic reactions. Rare people, less than 1 in 1,000. But there's a group that looks for wild mushrooms that can be edible and looks upon them as a gourmet food. Unfortunately, if they can't identify the mushrooms well, wild mushrooms can produce liver and kidney disease and death. These are usually the death cap mushroom. You can see the pictures online. In 90% of people who die from mushrooms, but also web caps and skull caps and destroying angels. But the edible mushrooms, the ones that you can buy in the store, the ones that you can see are promoted nationally, these are usually white button mushrooms, but also can be other mushrooms as well. You can find them in CVS and Walgreens. You can find them in the various food markets, both Whole Foods, very expensive, as well as Safeway and less expensive places. And they go under the names of lion's mane, chaga, and maitake, and reishi, shiitake mushrooms, and cordyceps. And these are promoted for health benefits. But the ones that I think are most likely to be beneficial are the white button mushrooms. So let's take a look at those with the next slide. The most common mushrooms that we actually eat are white button mushrooms. About 85% nationally are white button mushrooms. When they're young, they're known as buttons. They're known as baby bellas. You all see these, you all eat these. When they get older, before they're harvested, they become cremini mushrooms or portobello mushrooms, huge mushrooms. All of these have the same genetics. All of these have the same benefits, but the white button mushrooms are the product that we're going to be talking about today. It probably has the same benefits if you looked at baby bellas or creminis or portobellos. And the way we do this study is we take the white button mushrooms, we commercially prepare them through lyophilization, but we standardize the products in the City of Hope Biology Laboratory. So we know that each group of mushroom pills is exactly the same and very active, the same degree. And note that the dose of mushrooms that we use in this, which is 14 grams, you see the mushroom tablets here, the dose that we use is equivalent to about a half of a box of mushrooms every day. So these are supplied as pills, you can see them here, or we also supply them as placebo pills that look the same but don't contain the mushrooms. Next slide. In the next slide, we'll see that there are some scientific benefits from these mushrooms which have already been shown and established. The real science behind this study, we know that white button mushrooms can increase T cells. Those are the cells that kill cancers. The NK cells, the killer cells, which also kills cancer. And it increases immune responses. It even increases the beginning of the immune response when dendritic cells, which prepare antigens for presentation to the lymphocytes, it increases their function. But on the other hand, we also know that the immune system has some brakes on it, suppressor cells, and that these suppressor cells called MDSCs, or myeloid-derived suppressor cells, these are decreased by white button mushrooms, releasing the immune system to be able to work better. We also know in experimental animals that if they take white button mushrooms, their stool is improved. Now, you've heard the microbiome is an important part of our body. It's the bacteria that are in the gut, and it's in the skin and in the mucous membranes. You can increase the beneficial species in the gut, and we think that this increases the immune response, and these are increased by white button mushrooms. We know that the white button mushrooms decrease arginase activity, and this is important because arginase is one of those enzymes that decreases arginine levels, and that results in better function of the neurological system. It results in better function of the cardiac system. It also results in increased nitrous oxide. You may be familiar with nitrous oxide. It's the mechanism by which various pills will increase erectile function. And so therefore, this is white button mushrooms are a natural product that can increase this as well. In my laboratory, we've demonstrated that these white button mushrooms do have proteins, which are lectins. They bind to cell surfaces, which contain proteins with sugar in them. They bind to cancer cells very effectively. They bind to lymphocytes, and when they do, they activate the lymphocytes, again, increasing immune system. So there's lots of science why these mushrooms should be able to do things. And so the hypotheses that were originally tested and are still being tested now in this current study would be that white button mushrooms will slow or prevent PSA progression. They will prevent or even delay PSA recurrence. And we're going to be doing extra studies with this to look and see how many of these immune suppressor cells are in patients who get the mushrooms, whether it affects the lymphokines. These are the little molecules that increase your body's ability to fight infection, to fight cancer, and increase your immunity. Those of the participants who agree to do the special studies will give us some stool specimens, and we're going to look and see if we can increase the beneficial species in the stool microbiome. And we're going to see in patients who are going to get a COVID booster, we'll see if it increases the immune response to the COVID boosters, and it may be a beneficial treatment for people long-term to try to prevent COVID and prevent COVID-related illness. Next slide. So the study that we are going to be looking at is based upon a phase 1 study that was already done and published. It was done at City of Hope. It was published about 7 years ago in Cancer. Shemi Twardowski, who was at City of Hope at that time, did a study, and you can see from the results, it's in 36 patients who were treated. Everybody got mushrooms. There were no DLTs, which are dose-limiting toxicities. So there's nothing that was bad that happened to these patients in any major way. The overall response in their PSAs to decrease it by at least 50% was about 11%. 2 patients had a complete response in their prostate cancer. 2 other patients had a partial response in their prostate cancer. And these responses lasted a very long period of time. As you can see, the complete responses lasted 75 months, 56 months. Overall, a third of the patients had a decrease in the PSA. Now, this phase 1 study was at different escalating levels of mushrooms. So a lot of the patients got very low levels, probably would not be expected to have any kind of a benefit. But a lot of the patients who had benefit at the higher levels, they had complete remissions, partial remissions, or improvement in their PSAs. And we also observed that there were declines in these immune suppressor cells. And you can see, if you look on the very far right-hand side, you can see the duration of treatment, which in these patients, next slide, which in these patients was 54, 35, 39, and 11 months in these patients who had responses. And these were patients who had disease that we thought would be suitable for treatment. You can see all of them had higher levels of the mushrooms that we were giving them. Next slide. In the next slide, we can see what we're proposing to do at the present time. So this is our phase 2 trial. The principal investigators are Dr. Lau, who's head of urology over at the City of Hope, Dr. Twardowski, who's head of medical oncology and in urological cancer at the John Waynes Cancer Institute. Dr. Shen is head of our biology laboratory. Dr. Frankel does the statistics. Next slide. So this is an overview in which we're looking at 2 different groups of prostate cancer patients. Cohort 1, the first group of patients, are patients who've had primary therapy. So they've had surgery or radiation therapy, or maybe even cryotherapy, but they've had their adequate treatment of their prostate cancer. But now we see that their PSA is starting to rise, but they do not yet have any evidence of metastatic or recurrent cancer. All they have is a biochemically high PSA, and they're eligible for this study. The second cohort or group of prostate cancer patients are patients who are on active surveillance or watchful waiting. So these are patients therapy naive, meaning they've never had surgery, they've never had radiation or cryotherapy. They're favorable risk prostate cancer patients. I'll show you that the numbers later. And they're currently not getting any active treatment, just being watched. And lots of people are in this group. Some of you may be in this group. At the bottom, you see that this is a study in these patients that has received funding from the National Cancer Institute. It took us a long time to get the funding. We did get the funding and finally activated this in mid 2021. And we've got about a third of the patients that we need to complete this study. So we still have a lot of room for additional patients to participate. Next slide. So the next slide shows us that what we do is we freeze dry, lyophilize these white button mushrooms, which are called agaricus bisporus. They half a gram tablets, 500 milligram tablets, and these are provided to the patients. They're stored and handled by the pharmacists over at City of Hope and provided to the patients for taking during the course of the study. And the next slide. In the next slide, we see who we are including in the study. First of all, everybody, because this is a formal clinical trial, everybody gets an informed consent, says they're willing to participate. They agree to undergo the studies that we need to do for this, blood studies, or for the patients who are in active surveillance. Remember, active surveillance does include periodic prostate biopsies. They will have one before they start the mushrooms or the control pills. Age of over 18. ECOG status means they're active and up and around at least 50% of the time. Patients who are bedridden are not eligible for this trial. Next slide. In this, you'll see what we define as the patients in cohort 1 who have already had surgery or radiation. And their PSA is starting to rise. So if they've had a prostatectomy, the surgery, their PSA is rising and now it's over 0.2 nanograms per mil. If they've had radiation therapy or cryotherapy, remember the PSA in that circumstance does not go down as low, but wherever it's gone at its nadir, the lowest point, say the nadir was 1, if it increases by 2 nanograms per mil above that nadir, so if it goes from 1 to 3, or if it goes from 1.5 to 3.5, then they're eligible for this study as well. We know that they should have adequate testosterone levels. That means they should not have been on anti-testosterone medications recently. And so if they've been on certain types of androgen deprivation therapy, it should have been finished at least 6 months from day 1 that they would start the study. We don't have any restriction for what type of local therapy they had. So that's the group with biochemically recurrent prostate cancer, cohort 1. Next slide shows cohort 2. So remember, cohort 2 is patients who are on active surveillance or watchful waiting. And these will be clinical stages T1C to T2A. You see how it's defined there. We review this in any patient who thinks that they would like to participate in this trial. These include, in the active surveillance category, those patients who have Gleason's 6 or less, or a Gleason 7 based on a 3 plus 4. 4 plus 3 should be treated. 3 plus 4 can be in active surveillance. And so these patients have not had local therapy, and they have not had any hormonal therapy or chemotherapy. They could have had finasteride or dutasteride, but should have finished that at least 6 months prior to starting this. So patients who are on finasteride at the present time, for example, if they want to participate in this, they basically have to stop it, and then within 6 months, they're eligible to go on to the trial. If they've stopped it previously, then 6 months is the limit. Next slide. So there are some exclusions with this, and these are all listed here. You can read through them later on. But the important thing to note is that other illnesses or conditions might preclude people from participating. So as with any clinical trial, if you're allergic to what is going to be used in the trial, if you have an allergic reaction to mushrooms, you wouldn't be eligible. If you have uncontrolled illness, like uncontrolled diabetes or uncontrolled heart disease, that would be preclude your going into a clinical trial. Or if you have active infection at the present time. If infection's cleared, then patients are eligible. If you've had a non-skin cancer within 3 years, unless it's been cured and is in remission, you can't participate. But we can look at that individually, patient by patient, to see what is going on. So that's the reason we see a patient and evaluate their acceptability for. There are going to be two groups. So one group is cohort 1, which had previous treatment. Those patients do not require any biopsies. We know their PSA is starting to go up. And those patients will get randomized to either getting mushrooms. 2/3 of the patients get mushrooms. 1/3 gets control pills that look just like the mushrooms. And then all of these patients will get an initial examination in group 1. You can see it. They get an initial exam in cohort 1 every month for 3 months, at which time they will have blood tests done. And then every 3 months until they get to about a year. They will have a prostate MRI at the beginning to see how their prostate looks. Remember, they have a high PSA. And then they'll get every 3 months a repeat prostate MRI to see, is the prostate still the same, or is it shrunk, or is it getting bigger? So we can see what needs to be done. The blood tests are done the same time as the exam. No biopsy is needed. And again, the end of that trial will be, if the PSA continues to go up, that patient will then begin to get other treatment. If the PSA stays down, that patient will get mushroom or control pills for the duration of the year, and then we'll be off of those pills, and we'll see what happens with them after that. The previous slide, Brian, back one.
Okay,
Back one, Brian.
there we go.
Back one.
That good?
Yep, that's good.
Okay,
The patients in cohort 1, if they are on the control pills, can switch over to mushrooms at such time as they've been treated and are in remission. In cohort 2, this is the group now that is on watchful waiting or active surveillance. As is common with patients who are on active surveillance, they should have a biopsy at the beginning of this to make certain that they still have low-grade cancer, not high-grade cancer. They then will be examined every 3 months, at which time they will have blood tests done. They do not need a prostate MRI. They only get that if the PSA starts to go up. The biopsies are performed at entry level and then about a year, 48 weeks after they come in. And the purpose of the biopsy is first to make certain that they're low risk and not requiring treatment. The second purpose of the biopsy is to look and see what's happening in response to the mushrooms or the control pills, to know if they're getting lymphocyte activation locally at the prostate level, and if their prostate cancer is responding, perhaps shrinking dramatically, as we saw in many of the patients in the phase 1 study. So that's the 2 different cohorts. The 2 different groups have slightly different follow-up times. Remember that 2/3 of the patients will go on mushrooms, 1/3 will go on control pills. Next slide. So Brian, next slide shows us the extra studies that if a patient is willing to do this, they're willing in the antibody study, if they're going to get a booster vaccine, they'll then get a blood sample before the vaccine and then 2 weeks and 8 weeks later. If a patient's willing to collect a little stool for us, a simple collection kit will be given for free. They'll collect the stool and then they'll mail it back for free to our laboratory in Scottsdale, Arizona, where we do all our microbiome studies on the stool. The stool sample will be taken before mushroom pills or control pills, and then 4 weeks and 8 weeks later. So this is, again, an optional study. Many patients are willing to do this. Some patients may not be willing, whatever is appropriate. Next slide. So Brian, next slide.
The one about the trial?
This is the one about the trial. That's exactly the one that I want.
Yeah.
So why would I, Cary, want to join this or not join this trial? First of all, this is something that does not take the place of known beneficial treatments when they need to be given. If I'm in the mushroom treatment group, I can take the mushroom pills, which is a known nutrient, doesn't have major serious side effects, and I won't have to take endocrine therapy or other nutrient therapy, which is not proven to be effective, or we don't suspect will be effective. So it gives me something to do which can control my disease right now. If I am randomized into the control group, I can cross over to the mushroom pills or consider mushroom pills after primary therapy if I'm not benefiting from the pills that I'm getting, the control group pills. So you can always switch over to the mushroom pills. If I'm in the control group and the mushroom pills are proven to benefit patients, then I will be able to consider taking mushroom pills at that time that we know it works. And if the mushroom pills are shown to benefit patients, I've been part of a study that will help millions of prostate cancer patients in the future. If the mushroom pills increase immunity, which we truly believe they do, I've helped myself to increase my immunity, and I've helped other people to know how to increase their immunity too. That will include all the people in their family and friends and everyone else in the world as well. And if the mushroom pills help to improve the stool microbiome, then I've helped myself to have a healthier body, and I've helped other people as well. And we've got a key to how to improve the health of patients in the future. What is my cost for doing this? Well, it takes a little bit more time and effort to be in any clinical trial. You've got people who are recording your results. You're giving blood tests every 3 months, and you get examined every 3 months. And it takes a little more time with that exam to make certain you're all okay. The adverse effects that we saw in the phase 1 trial, about a third of patients got some very mild stomach bloating, nothing severe. And so they decreased the dose or stopped the pills and all went away. About 20% got a slight increase in their liver enzyme tests. And again, lowering the dose or stopping it, and those pills, then everything became normal. None of those were severe reactions. None of those limited dose. All of those tend to be very mild. And other than the stomach bloating, because there were a lot of pills they took in some of these patients, that was all easily taken care of. So if it's me, Cary, and wondering what am I going to do next with prostate cancer, which can be a scary disease, I'm here in the prostate forum. I'm participating in the prostate forum. I hear about this trial, and I think maybe I'm eligible for this trial. I should talk with the doctor and just on the phone and see if he thinks that I might be eligible. And if I'm eligible, then I can take steps to get onto this clinical trial. A simple trial and one that can really benefit me, can benefit all the people around me. And remember that prostate cancer is something that can occur in families. If my father had prostate cancer, I'm at higher risk for having prostate cancer. And my kids are at risk for having prostate cancer. My brothers are at risk for prostate cancer. So I know that this is something that may not only help me, but may help people in my family as well. And it's something based on science. We know that there are responses that we've seen already. So next slide. I wish you all well. I hope you continue to stay healthy and do well. You don't have to participate in this study if you don't want to. If you want to, We're willing to talk to you. Brian will put up our contact information later on. You can reach me through the Prostate Forum. Chuck knows my contact information. Neil knows my contact information. So you can get a hold of us at any time. And if you think about it, and even if it's delayed and you say later on, you know, I think maybe I'd like to try this, let us know. We're happy to work with you and see what can be done. We don't want you to replace your current urologists. We want you to continue with them, and we want you to use this as an additional type of possibility for your care. So good luck to all of you, and any questions, let me know what you have right now, and we'll be able to answer them. Thank you so very much.
Neil here. Are we really sort of at the verge of something that you could take a couple of mushroom pills starting at age 55 and just about prevent prostate cancer? Are we heading in that direction?
I think that's next step. We're at baby steps right now. So the first thing we want to do is to see if this has the benefit that we think it has. And if it does, the next step will be, can mushrooms actually prevent prostate cancer? And you know, that will probably take place, first of all, in clinical trials in patients who have maybe in families with hereditary prostate cancer. It may be in men who are at higher risk of prostate cancer. Remember, African Americans have a much higher risk of prostate cancer. We know that some patients who have larger prostates may be at increased risk of prostate cancer. And so we know that patients with PIN, prostatic intraepithelial neoplasia, which is kind of like pre-prostate cancer, we know that those patients will be candidates for future. But right now we have to focus on this.
Okay.
So if I were at risk, I would probably want to find out more and follow this information very carefully. But right now, I can't recommend mushrooms to prevent prostate cancer, nor can anyone, but I think hopefully in the future, we may be able to have more information on that. Part of the value of being part of the Prostate Forum is that as I learn about more information, I'll be happy to share it with you all in future fireside chats or just in future emails to you all through the Prostate Forum, so that now we are partners in going forward with regard to your health. So let's see what we can do together with that.
Outstanding. Please stay in touch.
Yes. Are there any questions in the chat?
I have a couple. You said that selenium is part of mushrooms, and so this is concentrated. Is there a lot of selenium in the pills?
There's some selenium in the pills. We haven't measured the selenium in the pills, but because it's a lyophilized extract, I believe that there will be selenium in it, and all of the other things that I mentioned that are part of regular store-bought mushrooms will be in the lyophilized material as well. The important thing to realize is that as these preparations go forward, they are standardized not for the amount of selenium, but they're standardized for the amount of arginase, which we think is a very active ingredient in this, so that we make certain that these preparations are all active in the amounts that we are giving. So that's, you know, that's one of the values of our pharmaceutical system in the United States, is that all these batches of pills are watched very carefully. And you've seen in social media and in regular media, you've seen where batches are pulled from the market when they find that they don't contain the right stuff, or they contain things that are not the right stuff that might be harmful. So same thing exists with this. We do the pharmacologic approach to this, so we know that it's going to be okay.
The reason the reason I asked that is because of the SELECT study done in, I think, 2011 or so, which showed that selenium and vitamin E had a bad effect on prostate cancer. So that's why I asked that question.
There was a previous study that showed that selenium helped prostate cancer and helped prevent it, and as well as a couple other cancers. And so the SELECT study did not confirm that, but we do not think that this is deleterious in any way based on the amounts that we're using and the small amount of selenium that's present.
Okay,
It's a very small amount of selenium, so I'm not suspicious of that.
okay.
There's Phil Siegel in Toronto sent a message to everyone. Are there any brands of mushroom pills and powder you might recommend to persons not taking part in the study? So I've gone around to try and find white button mushroom pills that are available on the market. I can't find them. They are not currently produced. So the only thing that you, if you're not in the study, that you can do is to get white button mushrooms at the market and take, half of a small box of those every day or whatever amount that you can tolerate, if you believe that that might be helpful to you. I have not found a source for white button mushroom powder. I see other mushrooms that have powder, other types of mushrooms, and I see other types of mushroom containing pills even available at CVS, such as lion's mane, for example. But those are not the white button mushrooms that we're talking about here. Those have not shown any benefits yet in doing anything with this. So in answer to your question, if you can find pills that are available, you might want to share that with other people and share it with me as well, because I can't find those. We have a couple of questions here. Let's see. Do you have any provisions for collaboration for out-of-state folks? That might be available through City of Hope has just acquired Cancer Treatment Centers of America with spots available in Arizona, in Scottsdale, in Chicago, and in Atlanta. Beyond that, I don't see how patients can participate in this unless they want to take and come to one of our centers in Southern California, sign up for the study. But before that, you should probably be on a telehealth conversation with me or with one of our participating active people to see from a physician standpoint if you actually are eligible. But we've had patients who come to us from other places in the world and flown in and come in for treatments and then going back out. Remember that there are not a lot of actual visits involved in this study. The number of visits in the study over the first year is about 5 to 7 visits. And that's enough that some people are willing to come to us and actually travel to us to get that. I know when I was at the National Cancer Institute, I had people who would be coming in for clinical trials from throughout the Eastern Seaboard. When I was at Washington University in St. Louis, I had people who were coming in for clinical trials from all over the Midwest. So it's not unusual to do this. In Los Angeles, we always have this feeling, oh, if it's more than 15 to 20 minutes, I don't know if I want to travel that far. But just remember that to get therapy, people often do travel a goodly long length. Other information in chat, I can't see the other chat things. I know there was other questions. Can you read them off to me, Neil, maybe? Can Neil read them off or Brian read them off to me? Because I don't see the chat anymore on my screen here.
Someone asked to post the information a little larger. I've done that. And the next question from Bob
Sure, thank
Morris
you.
is, does the preparation method impact effectiveness?
We don't know that for sure. We know that it does not impact the active ingredient that suppresses arginase, and we know that it does not impact the ability to improve the immune response. But I can't guarantee that every lyophilized extract will be the same. So, I mean, some people have lyophilizer machines at home and can lyophilize anything. These are the things that are used for dried fruit. You can buy them in the stores, but I can't guarantee that will be successful in giving you an active ingredient with these. So I can't tell you if that's what I want to do. How does this compare with those who have a plant-based diet? We not compare this with people who are on plant-based diets, vegan diets, vegetarian diets. I can't tell you that right now. It's an interesting question. And I think the interesting question is, we know plant-based diets can be very healthy. They can be a little bit dangerous if you don't take supplemental vitamins and things like that with it. And they can be dangerous if you don't have enough protein sources. But usually vegan, people who go on a vegan diet do have plenty of sources because they've researched it pretty well. So therefore, what we don't know is whether those people who are on vegan diets have a decreased frequency of prostate cancer. That would be an interesting thing to look at, but we've not looked at that ourselves. If you know of anyone who has looked at that, we'd like to look at that and see what happens. So the next question came from Steve.
There was a study done among a few years ago among people who had changed their diet plant-based by Dr. Ornish, and it showed a decrease in PSA. It was a small study. There was a tendency.
Well, that may be partly due to the increased intake of mushrooms, which probably are part of that dietary switch. Not that they have it every day, but it may well be that that's part of what we're seeing. I can't tell you that for sure because I don't know exactly what the amounts are that those people were eating, but we'll see. Preparation, sautéing fresh mushrooms. Does sautéing destroy these active ingredients? It probably does destroy some of it because heating does destroy these lectins that are in the mushrooms. So I think that if I was going to go to trying to increase mushroom intake, I would basically chop them up and add them to salads and add them to soups or sauces, etc., things like that. There's a question: if you eat raw white button mushrooms, what we all have done, would that help your prostate? I don't know for sure that it would help them. It certainly wouldn't hurt them, the prostate. And I think that if you were going to do that, you'd have to want to take enough of them to benefit you. Remember that there are some lay publications that have said take 5 white button mushrooms every day. Some would say if you're going to take the same dose that we're using in this study, you'd have to take a half of a box of white button mushrooms. But we did see benefits in the PSA just from taking half of that amount in some patients. So that would be like about a quarter of a box of white button mushrooms. So people can do that. And, I think there's nothing wrong with that. It's probably healthy, and it's probably something with which you all might be interested at the present time. But for those of you who are really seriously interested in this, I'd say let's talk about it and see if you're eligible for the trial. If you're not eligible for the trial, certainly going to the store and getting your white button mushrooms and trying to use those would be quite reasonable. I don't see any other questions that have been posted right now. Do you see any other ones, Neil or Brian?
I think that's it. Neil? You're on mute, Neil.
No, I don't see any other questions.
Okay. We should know that we now have physicians in Newport Beach, so we can, and physicians in other community offices down in Orange County, and that our big center from City of Hope is going to open in Irvine next month. And we're trying to, right at the present time, see if we can actually open this study in Newport Beach or Irvine so that patients who live there won't have to travel up to West Covina or to Duarte to access it. But since there are so few actual visits required,
Not a big deal.
for patients from Orange County to come up to Duarte. So thank you very much for the opportunity to share this with you. If we can help any of you at any time, let us know. Thanks a lot for your interest, and hoping that all of you stay healthy and live forever and enjoy it.
Thank you very much, Doctor, and we look forward to having you back again.
And we will let you know when it's posted. Thank you.
Happy to be here. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.